Welcome to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast, your weekly news roundup of hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories from around the Gem State. Hosted by Fish and Game's Public Information Specialist, Connor J. Lease.
And welcome back, everyone, to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast. It's been a busy week for hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories here in Idaho. Lots of stories to cover this week and several tag sale opportunities coming your way. So let's jump right into it. This week on the Hook and Bulletin, we'll be talking about dead fish in American Falls Reservoir, sage-grouse tags, and a cutting-edge method of estimating wolf abundance. But first, here's what you need to know about fishing during summer's hottest days. Lots of anglers are familiar with the term, quote-unquote, hoot owl, as it applies to fishing when temperatures get unbearably hot. But if you're not familiar with the phrase, which actually comes from the logging industry, believe it or not, it's the management decision to restrict angling for a portion of the day in order to safeguard fish from the effects of high water temperatures. And unless you've been living and sleeping in the deep freezer since mid-June, like I've attempted a couple times, you've probably noticed it's been a hot summer. And it's not just a one-off. Higher stream temperatures have become more common in recent years, leading anglers to ask two common questions. Is catch and release fishing actually causing harm to trout populations by fishing on summer days when water temperatures get warm? And number two, should Fish and Game use hoot owl fishing closures to prohibit catch and release fishing when water temperatures get too warm? Both are really fair questions that come from a good place and genuine curiosity. So back during the summer of 2021, some of our fisheries biologists set out to help answer these questions. And here's what they found. The study included 4 streams in eastern Idaho, where anglers caught dozens of trout ranging from 7 to 15 inches on days where water temperatures ranged from 56 degrees to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Biologists marked each landed trout with a small external tag, recorded the water temperature when it was caught, and then released it back into the stream. Anglers carefully tracked how long they fished and how many trout they caught, so they could estimate a catch rate, or simply how good the fishing was. A few weeks later, biologists returned and surveyed the trout population with electrofishing gear to look for the tagged trout. Using the tags from recaptured trout, biologists could see if water temperature at the time the fish were landed had affected which trout survived and which ones didn't. The results suggested that higher water temperatures were indeed decreasing the survival of caught and released trout. However, catch rates were much lower, actually 77% lower, at the higher water temperatures above 73 degrees Fahrenheit, and much better when temperatures were below 66 degrees Fahrenheit. So, while mortality was higher at the hottest temperatures, the number of trout caught was much lower because it was much harder to catch fish at those warmer temperatures. This phenomenon is well known to trout anglers, who often stop fishing in the heat of the day anyway because catch rates are poor compared to cooler times of the day. Essentially, it boils down to this. Anglers do cause a low amount of fishing mortality, regardless of the water temperature. However, while mortality of individual trout goes up with higher water temperatures, angler catch success goes down at the same time. Because catch rates drop as the water temperatures climb, anglers are causing as much fishing mortality at lower water temperatures as they are at higher water temperatures because they're simply catching fewer trout. It goes without saying that warm water and wild trout do not go well together. Trout need cold, clean, well-oxygenated water to thrive. Droughts and hot summers have become more common lately, and biologists also consider the added stress trout face by living in warmer water. Stress is nothing new to trout, which are adapted to deal with stresses like being chased by predators like cormorants and river otters, or dealing with extreme floodwaters in the spring. However, we need to keep in mind that trout populations are very resilient. After stressful events such as floods or drought, trout populations can rebound quickly when conditions are good. In the last several years, water temperatures exceeding 73 degrees Fahrenheit are extremely rare, occurring in only about 1% of the 300,000 hours of data we gathered. So, in the vast majority of Idaho's wild trout stream fisheries, they rarely see extremely warm water temperatures in the first place. On those occasions where trout streams do get above 73 degrees, anglers may want to pause fishing because catch rates are noticeably lower, but not because they are worried about harming the trout population. For more on this topic and to read about a real-world example from 2021 along Idaho's Big Wood River, hit the link in the description to read Martin Koenig's story on our website. Next up, wildlife managers are rolling out a new method of estimating the state's wolf population. A new method using genetic and age information taken from every harvested wolf checked by Idaho Fish and Game aims to provide a more reliable and repeatable population estimate as wolf numbers eventually decrease. Researchers use the wolf's genetic information to understand relatedness among the harvested wolves and a computer modeling process that uses the pattern of relatedness to estimate the total number of wolves that produce that pattern. The new genetic-based method uses data that our wildlife staff have collected for years from harvested wolves, and with that historical genetic data, researchers produced estimates for the previous years. They worked for more than a year to produce the genetics-based estimates, and then compared them to camera-based estimates of statewide wolf populations from 2019 through 2023. Although there were slight variations between the two methods, they produced very similar results. So, what about the camera-based estimates then? Well, as wolf populations decrease, it becomes difficult and thus less reliable to use cameras to estimate their populations. That method, known as the space-to-event model, functions on the basis that the rarer something is, the more places you have to look to find it. And as you could probably guess, fewer wolves means fewer chances of spotting those wolves, making the method less reliable down the road. And not to mention, scanning millions of photos from hundreds of game cameras every year takes a really, really long time. In comes the genetic-based method. Although the camera method has produced reliable results to date, Fish and Game researchers predict its reliability will decline if they get fewer pictures of wolves, which would happen if the state's wolf population was smaller. To ensure a reliable replacement was available before discontinuing the camera-based monitoring, Fish and Game staff developed the new genetic-based method and then produced 5 past-year estimates for direct comparison with the camera-based estimates. After seeing similar results, Fish and Game staff is confident to move forward with the new genetics-based method. Now, I pretty much summarized all that in about 2 minutes. There's a lot of math and behind-the-scenes action that goes into providing annual wolf population estimates. Hit the link in the description if you want to read more. Speaking of counting, here's a story about hundreds of dead fish that washed up along American Falls Reservoir. On the morning of July 26, Fish and Game fisheries biologists, along with folks from the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, responded to calls from the public regarding a possible fish kill in American Falls Reservoir. Fisheries biologists report that approximately 250 dead rainbow trout could be observed from the shoreline, though it is difficult to estimate how many total dead fish are present in the reservoir. Based on DEQ's water quality tests, low dissolved oxygen levels most likely caused the fish deaths. On Tuesday, July 23rd, dissolved oxygen levels in American Falls Reservoir dropped more than half by Friday morning. So what caused the sudden drop in dissolved oxygen levels? It's actually pretty fascinating. That Thursday evening, strong winds with a few gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour caused the water in the reservoir to quote-unquote turn over, bringing the water from the reservoir's bottom up to the top. Large bodies of water like American Falls Reservoir are stratified, meaning that there are distinct water layers varying in temperature and dissolved oxygen levels. During the summer, the cold bottom layer of a large water body contains low levels of dissolved oxygen, and if there is a sudden turnover of the water layers, that can be deadly for fish. Quote, "The winds acted like a giant spoon, mixing the reservoir, so to speak," said Fish and Game regional fisheries biologist Ryan Hilliard. Quote, "And that mixing action brought stressfully low levels of dissolved oxygen to some parts of the reservoir occupied by fish," end quote. Most of the fish affected by the wind-generated turnover are rainbow trout, which is not surprising to biologists. Trout are more sensitive to low dissolved oxygen levels than are other fish species like bass or perch. Though fisheries biologists did see a dead bass at the reservoir, the majority of dead fish were trout. At 56,000 acres, American Falls Reservoir is Idaho's largest reservoir when full. Events like this have happened before at large water bodies like this one, and though they can be alarming to anglers, the fish deaths that typically result are truly just a small drop in a very large bucket. Our fisheries biologists believe it's likely that most fish were able to find refuge in other areas of this large reservoir, and impacts to the fishery are likely not going to be significant. That's all I got on that one. Check out Jenny Jackson's story on our website if you want to learn more. Last up, here's a chance to check out the newly approved 6-year elk management plan approved by the Fish and Game Commission last week. The Idaho Fish and Game Commission recently approved a new 6-year elk management plan after staff solicited public review and adapted the draft plan to reflect public input. The updated elk plan is not a complete overhaul of the former management plan. The department and commission retain the framework of Idaho's elk hunting, which includes 28 elk hunting zones under the AB tag system and a mix of general and controlled hunts. The plan is essentially a blueprint for sustaining healthy elk herds, rebuilding herds that are below objectives, and establishes goals that Fish and Game will work to achieve without determining specifics for hunting in each unit or zone, which is done during biannual season setting. Here's Fish and Game Deer and Elk Coordinator Toby Bedreau on what that means.
This plan is going to take us into the future to maintain and hopefully improve Idaho's elk hunting. Idaho elk hunting has been on a roll in the last decade or so. Annual harvests have been well above long-term averages, but we know there's always room for improvement, and we wanted hunters to weigh in on their preferences before going forward.
Hunters' input was a critical step in this process. After the comment period ended in the spring, Fish and Game staff reviewed 231 public responses regarding their level of support of the draft elk plan. Overall, the plan was supported by residents and non-residents, with 87% indicating support for or support with concerns. Most of the comment topics hit on issues that were already outlined in the plan, so they did not result in major changes, including predator management, congestion and hunt quality, methods of distributing tags, and private lands and elk. The full plan is still in draft form, but it is available right now on our website. Hit the link in the description to read Roger Phillips' latest story and peruse the draft elk plan at your leisure. All right, with that, it's time for the Rapid Fire Bulletin. Today, right now, is August 1st, or at least it is if you're tuning in to this podcast right after it dropped. August 1st is an important day. Why? Because in about 6 hours at the stroke of midnight, the chance to buy your controlled hunt tags will be gone as some flat-footed hunters turn into pumpkins. Don't be one of those pumpkins. You still got time, hopefully, if you're listening to this. Head on over to the Controlled Hunt results page or log into your GoOutdoorsIdaho.com account to snag your tag. Idaho Department of Lands has imposed Stage 1 fire restrictions for all state, federal, and private property within the Payette dispatch area due to critical fire danger, which includes Fish and Game's Cecil D. Andrews Wildlife Management Area. Hit the link in the description to see a list of restrictions, and for more information, contact the Southwest Regional Office at 208-465-8465. Hey, in case you missed it, the full recap of the July 24th Idaho Fish and Game Commission meeting is now on YouTube in full HD. A lot of the stories mentioned today on the Hook and Bulletin came out of last week's meeting, as well as some other interesting information and topics. So, if you want to skim through the presentations on your lunch break, I'll include a link down below. Also, as of today, August 1st, sage-grouse and sandhill crane tags are now on sale. A total of 5,091 sage-grouse tags and 656 sandhill crane tags are available on a first-come, first-served basis. Tags will be available at Idaho Fish and Game license vendors, online at GoOutdoorsIdaho.com, or by phone. Just a reminder that sage-grouse season runs September 21st through October 31st. Hunters can buy up to 2 tags and may buy a tag for more than one zone. An updated sage-grouse seasons and rules brochure, including number of tags available for each hunting zone, is available online at the Sage-Grouse Seasons and Rules webpage. Link in the description. Okay, that's it for this week's stories. It's time for our question of the week. This question comes to us from Brandon S. Brandon says he's a relatively new big game hunter and wants to know if second tags are the same thing as extra tags. The short answer is no, they ain't the same. Extra tags are controlled hunt tags, typically for antlerless animals where there's a need to reduce herd sizes for management purposes. They are quote-unquote extra tags to allow hunters this opportunity without forcing a choice between this hunt and a general hunt or another controlled hunt. Second tags, on the other hand, are simply non-resident tags that are available to residents and non-residents at non-resident prices as additional hunting opportunity. That's all the news we have for this week. Thanks for putting an ear to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin. If there's something on your mind or if you got a question related to fish and game matters, feel free to drop us a line at podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Again, that's podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll catch you next week.